Alva Johnson was an enthusiastic staffer on Donald Trump's presidential campaign. But in a new lawsuit, she says that on August 24th, 2016, then-candidate Donald Trump, seen there that day, quote, forcibly kissed her without her consent as he exited an RV in Florida while on the campaign trail. Johnson's lawsuit also alleges the Trump campaign paid her less than her counterparts because she's a black woman. The White House strenuously denies both claims. Sarah Sanders called the sexual misconduct accusation absurd on its face and said it is contradicted by, quote, multiple highly credible eyewitness accounts. We do not know what exactly happened on that day in Florida. There are, in fact, 3 people who say they were present and deny Johnson's claim. But the claim is not, as Sanders suggests, absurd on its face. The conduct that Johnson describes is the same conduct that the president himself bragged about on the infamous Access Hollywood tape that came out 6 weeks after the alleged incident. And her account echoes stories from at least 15 other women who accused the president of kissing them and touching their bodies without their consent. And here to tell her story on camera for the first time is former Trump campaign staffer Alva Johnson. Thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So before we get to August 24th, I just want to ask, how'd you get on the campaign? What motivated you to be a part of the Trump campaign?
Well, I thought it may have been a good idea to have a businessman in office. When I joined the campaign, there were still 16 other candidates, Republican candidates. So I didn't think he really had a chance of winning, but I felt that it would be good to support a businessman. I thought that maybe some business acumen would be needed.
And what was your experience on the campaign before this happened, as you allege, on August 24th?
I started off as the director of outreach coalitions for the state of Alabama. I threw one of the largest rallies during that time.
The Sessions one? Where
the Sessions one with the 33,000, yes. I
sat here at this desk and we covered it live.
And so I feel like I helped legitimize him in some ways because of successes like that. And then afterwards, I traveled to various states during the primaries. I was in Indiana, I was in Wisconsin, Utah, and helped secure the delegates and help win Indiana, which also gave him the GOP nomination.
Tell me what you say happened to you on August 24th, the day that you allege in the lawsuit the president forcibly kissed you.
So I usually, I always like to make sure that our volunteers are the ones that get to spend that time with him. That's not what I'm there for. They're the ones that making the phone calls. So I had my distance. I was over in the corner. I wasn't close to him. I was wearing a baseball cap, and but he had to pass me on his way exiting from the RV. And so as he passed me, I looked at him and I said, no, you go and do a good job, go kick ass, because I've been away from my family for a long time. And so he stops, he grabs my hand, and he starts looking at me. And then as he's looking at me, he's holding my hand, he said, I'm going to do a good job, I'm not going to let you down, I know you've been away from your family, and I appreciate what you're doing. And he's holding my hand, and then he starts coming towards me. And so he's still holding my hand, and then I just had a lot of internal dialogue. I'm like, okay, is he gonna hug me? You know, and then he keeps coming closer, and I'm like, okay, is he gonna hug me? I'm like, oh my God, I think he's going to kiss me. Because he was coming directly for my face. I mean, this is with the bill of a baseball cap. And so he just starts getting closer, and then when I realized that he's going to kiss my lips, I turned my mouth, and he kissed me. He caught me right in the corner of my mouth, and I was just kind of frozen. I didn't know how to process it. I knew it was inappropriate because I worked in human resources, so I knew that it was completely inappropriate. It was gross and creepy. I can sometimes still see those lips, and so he walked out and
Were there other people right around you at that point?
Yes, there were 2 other women that were still on the RV. There was only 3 women on the RV, myself, Pam Bundy, and Carrie Giorno. And so
this is inside the RV?
This is inside of the RV. And most of the volunteers had kind of filed out because they had to file out in order for him to exit.
Was there any, debrief? Was there any eye contact exchanged after that?
Well, Pam kind of looked at me and Karen Giorno, who I reported to at the time, kind of grabbed my elbow and kind of congratulatory. And I didn't feel that way. I was really grossed out.
Pam Bondi, I should say, says the following: as a career prosecutor and attorney general, had I seen anything improper, I would have taken action. I was with the president of the RV, and these allegations are false. So she's an eyewitness there, and she says you are not telling the truth.
I wish you would have taken action. But no, that's not true.
I guess my question is, how much did this resonate with you as an infraction? Was it something that you felt like I immediately need to go to talk to supervisors? Was it a creepy thing that you kept to yourself? Like, what'd you do afterwards?
So afterwards, like, I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know what context to put it in. And so I just kind of went on with my job. I pushed it to the back of my head. You know, you second guess yourself. I'm like, okay, I'm wearing like a U-neck T-shirt. I'm wearing a baseball cap. I'm wearing jeans. So I just kind of pushed it in the back of my head. I didn't know how to contextualize it.
And at what point? Fast forward 6 weeks after that, right? So the Access Hollywood tape comes out.
Right.
Two things happen. The president says, I just start kissing women if I'm attracted to them. Mm-hmm. You can do anything. You can grab them by wherever. And then a number of women make on-the-record accusations about similar unwanted sexual contact. What's going through your head when you hear that?
So when I heard the audio, I mean, I was like screaming in my car. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what he did to me. Like, he literally described exactly what he did to me, minus the grab, the pee. I see a woman, it's like a magnet. I can't even help it. I just go right in the kiss. I don't ask. And so for me, it solved the questions. You know, you kind of second guess, and so it solved every question I had about the intention. It solved every question I had about the amount of inappropriateness that it was. And I never went back to work.
After that?
I never went back to work, and I had never missed a day before then.
Did you give an explanation?
I was afraid, you know. I was afraid, you know, like the election, like the campaign was still going on. And so I just told them I wasn't coming back. And then they sent me a letter terminating me, although I quit.
So that was the breaking point. You had gone through this experience. You saw the Access Hollywood tape. Did you think in that moment, because there are women coming forward, do you think about doing that yourselves?
I immediately found a lawyer. And a couple of days after Access Hollywood, I spoke to a lawyer who found me to be very credible. They could see how distraught I was. I was down in Florida, a state I didn't live in. I was living in campaign housing that my boyfriend and I went in when my roommate went to work and got all of our things, made sure everything, you know, left the keys on the dining room table, and found alternate housing that we paid for. And so I found an attorney right afterwards, but he, for business reasons, he didn't move forward with my case. And so at that point, you know, James Comey has the breaking news. And so I'm down in Florida crying my eyes out, listening to Solange, you know. And breaking news is they're reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation. So I became terrified because it shifted the momentum. And I'm like, oh my God, he might actually win this. And so I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do? Like, sue the president? You know? I became scared.
You talked to people contemporaneously about this when it happened?
I called people immediately when I was driving from Tampa back to our office in Sarasota, like that day. So I never waited.
Your boyfriend?
My boyfriend, my parents. Like, I never waited to, like, you know, I called them, and I remember being on the phone with my parents and driving from Tampa back to Sarasota, and I was telling them about it. For some reason, I started to become emotional, like I had to pull off of the interstate. And so, yes, I told people, like, immediately, like the same day that it happened.
So you talked to this lawyer, he ultimately doesn't go forward with it. We're sitting here in 2019, you file a lawsuit. To people that look at that lag between that and now, and you know, you gave an interview in 2017 where you praised the president. I think you applied to work in the White House at one point. Mm-hmm. To people that look at that and say, well, how do you what do you say to them when they look at that and they are confused? So,
I mean, I'm under a non-disclosure. I feel like my vocal cords have been clipped for years. You're not supposed to criticize him. You're not supposed to criticize the family. You're not supposed to criticize the campaign. You cannot criticize his business. It's used as a weapon against us. And so, you know, I had no representation. At the point he's become the president, I'm like, well, let me just move on with my life. And it's, I'm a regular person. It's kind of how I feel about things. Like, I live in a very red state. And so it becomes overwhelming and you don't know what to do. But then in the meantime, you know, you see Charlottesville happen. I start to develop a lot of guilt because I feel like I legitimized, you know, him. I worked for the campaign for a very long time. So then you have the babies in cages, you know, and I felt like I never signed up for things like that. Sorry, I never signed up for that. And then you have him mocking women with the Me Too movement, making fun of them. And for me, I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's exactly what you did to me. And I don't feel like I don't want to keep my mouth shut. I want my voice back. I want my freedom to speak freely without the fear, or at least without good people surrounding me that will help me fight this.
What do you see happening next as you pursue this? I mean, there's an NDA. Obviously, the president, you know, the White House has denied it, and they are going to try to get this thrown out. He's the president, and the NDA. How committed are you to pursuing this?
I am going to fight. Like, I'm not giving this up. If I was going to give up, I would have given up a long time ago. I never gave up. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what else to do, but I'm not giving up on this. I will fight this because this is, you know, he seems so proud of his misogyny.
Did you see that on the campaign? Was that, I mean, I think there are some people who are probably watching this who are saying the television screen, wasn't that clear to you? Who this guy was and what he did and what he was all about, and he came down the escalator and said Mexico's sending rapists, and you know, and he talked about how hot his daughter was on Howard Stern.
Yeah, which is gross. But again, there were 16 people in the race. Like, there were, you know, I mean, you still had Jeb Bush, you still had Ben Carson. Like, there was no way that I absolutely even felt that he had a legitimate chance.
So this was just a sort of thing to do.
No, it wasn't just a thing to do. I feel like I contributed a lot. You know, I have great
I'm not saying
skill sets.
Right. Yeah.
I had great skill sets that I brought to the table, but I didn't think he really had a legitimate chance of winning. And then at the point that he became the nominee, and I've been on the campaign for so long, and I wasn't really around him as much as I worked with the people. Like, I liked working with the people, and so I worked with a lot of his supporters. I helped build the offices and things like that, and so yeah, you know, I didn't think that he was going to win.
That was not your first interaction with him, am I correct, on the RV?
No.
So you had other interactions?
I had 2 other interactions.
2 others, and how were those? What were those like?
The first time I met him, it was in Birmingham, and I was going to, it was before I joined the campaign. It was right, like it was a condition of us. Well, you know, you have to meet him so that you can join the campaign. So I remember walking towards him, and he's looking at me. He's like, oh, fantastic, fantastic, beautiful, beautiful. And so for me, when I immediately reached him, and it felt like a longer walk than it was because of the comments. When I reached him, I immediately tried to divert his attention, like, hey, by the way, I'm going to be coming on board to work for you. So I didn't feel like I would still have to, you know, endure anything like that now that I'm like an employee, and I was actually an employee of the campaign. And then I was only around him one other time, but like I said, like, I never took selfies. It was legitimately all about the volunteers and the people who were sacrificing their time. So anytime he was around, it was more important for me for them to have that time with him than it was for me myself. Like, I was never that type, like I never, you know, I was never running up behind him.
Part of the lawsuit is about differential pay, both because of your gender and your race.
Right.
How did you know that at the time? How did you learn that? What caused you to sort of pursue that avenue?
This is another reason why I will not stop, is because I had absolutely no idea I was being so grossly underpaid compared to other people who either had similar jobs or who had less responsibility. There was a kid who, during his spring break, knocked on doors, and then he took a permanent job during the general election, who was making more than double a month what I was making, who was an 18-year-old white male. And with me coming with 20 years of work experience, from private sector, but I was a rock star on the campaign.
Why do you think that was, that race and or gender was at the heart of that?
Because thankfully I have great lawyers now who have looked to see what other people were making compared to what I was making, and there really isn't no other excuse. I mean, if my job performance wasn't so great, then they would not have constantly asked me to travel from state to state. I was on the road from March until October, until I left, away from my family. There were other people that were staffers who were not invited to travel. And so they put me in some of their most important primary states that they needed to win. So it definitely was not because of my job performance. I don't know how else to quantify the fact that I was so grossly underpaid.
Final question for you.
Sure.
You're now public. You're here talking to me. You're on camera. Your name is out there. Are you prepared or worried about being a public figure and being someone that he and his supporters will very likely publicly attack?
I know that they will, and I just have to be tough. I'm not going to back down from this fight. You're not going to underpay me. You're definitely not going to physically violate me. My opportunity to move forward in court is also the opportunity for the other 20-plus women who have accused him of physically violating their space. I think women deserve to be paid the same that men are being paid. And I was like, I'm not going to look at my family. I have children. I cannot look my children in the eyes knowing that that I've been treated this way and not fight for myself. So I'm in this fight for the long haul.
Alva Johnson, former campaign staff for the president, now suing the president of the United States. Thank you so much for making your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.